Hey everyone, welcome to my channel English for All Reasons Good, based on the CBSE guidelines and syllabus. Today, we are going to do the second part of the chapter, A Thief's Story by Ruskin Bond. As you already know that I have discussed first two pages in the previous video, that is part 1 of the chapter. Today, I am going to do the rest of the pages, the question and answers and a long question, how you can attempt a long question. That will also be discussed in the end. So let's get started. Now on page 10, what was Anil's profession and what was his financial condition and how do you know about it? So Anil wrote for magazines and it seemed that it was not a regular job. Thus he made money by fits and starts. So it means he was inconsistent and he made money at irregular intervals. Because of this reason, his financial condition was not very sound. Also, he clearly told Hari Singh that he could not pay him for his work. He was in the habit of borrowing one week and then lending the other. And as soon as he would get his check, he would go out and celebrate. All this shows that his financial condition was weak. Do you think Anil did the right thing in announcing that he had sold a book to a publisher and keeping the money in the presence of Hari Singh? Now, this do you think question, it is your viewpoint. Whatever viewpoint you want to give, you can write about that, but with a proper reasoning. Now, having faith and trust in others is a good thing, but trusting someone blindly is not wise. Though Anil did not know that Hari Singh was a thief, he knew that he had been slipping a rupee or so from the daily expenses. It was only a month that Hari Singh had put up with Anil, so it was too soon for Anil to completely trust him. Now, this is very important. Anil did not know about the past of Hari Singh, but Anil knew that he had been slipping a rupee or so from his daily expenses. So it wasn't wise for Anil to blindly trust Hari Singh. So it was too soon for Anil to completely trust him. Therefore, according to me, Anil should not have kept the money under the mattress in front of Hari Singh. Now, what does Hari Singh mean when he says that he had not done anything in his line of work? Now, Hari Singh was a thief and he used to rob others by winning their confidence. He had been living with Anil for a month but had not robbed him yet. Though he had been cheating Anil on shopping, he had not done anything in his line of work. That is his actual purpose of robbing Anil. So that is why he says that he hasn't done anything in his line of work. Now, what opportunity did Hari Singh have and why didn't he use that opportunity? Hari Singh had every opportunity to rob Anil as Anil had given him the key of his house. So he could easily take his valuables and leave. But he did not do so. It was Anil's trust and faith in him that was making it hard for Hari Singh to rob him. Now, why does Hari Singh say that it is difficult to rob a careless man? According to Hari Singh, it is easy to rob a greedy man because he can afford it. But it is difficult to rob a careless man because sometimes he doesn't even come to know that he has been robbed. And this takes away all the pleasure of taking the pain in robbing him. Now, next question on page number 10 only. Well, he says, it's time I did some real work. So I am out of practice. What real work and practice is Hari Singh talking about? Now, the speaker, Hari Singh, is talking about his real work of robbing people. Since he has not got any chance of robbing someone for quite some time, he thinks that he might be out of practice. So, before this could happen, he wanted to rob Anil. Now, how did Hari Singh justify his act of robbing Anil? After seeing a small bundle of notes with Anil, Hari Singh was tempted to steal from him. So, obviously, he was a thief, so he was tempted. It was Anil's blind trust in him that was keeping him from stealing that money. Now, on one hand, he was a thief, he was tempted. But on the other hand, there was something in Hari Singh's heart that was stopping him. So that was Anil's blind trust. But he justified his act by arguing that Anil, as such, would be wasting that money on his friends And after all, he was not being paid for the work that he had been doing for Anil for the past 1 month. So this way he justifies his act of robbing Anil. Next question. Anil was not paying Hari Singh anything for his work. So does this make Hari Singh a legitimate contender to rob him of that money? So again, this is your viewpoint question. Now it is true that Anil was not paying Hari Singh for the work Hari Singh was doing for him. But Anil had made it clear to Hari Singh that he could not pay him before he kept him with him at his house. It was agreed upon by Hari Singh that Anil would feed him and provide him shelter for the work that Hari Singh would do. Above this, Anil was also teaching Hari Singh to read and write. Thus, Hari Singh was wrong in thinking that he could rob Anil because Anil did not pay him for his work. Now, what was Hari Singh's plan after he stole the money? So, his plan was to catch the 10:30 p.m. express to Lucknow. I could live like an oil rich Arab for a week or two. So, what does Hari Singh mean by this? Hari Singh was able to steal money from his benefactor. After coming out of the road, he counted the notes to be 600 rupees in 50s. And that money was more than enough money for him to live like a wealthy man, like an oil rich Arab, and spend lavishly for a week or two. So, this is what he meant when he said that I could live like an oil rich Arab for a week or two. Now, next question on page number 11. Why was Hari Singh not able to board the Lucknow Express? Now, as you read the chapter, actually, so you will come across all these questions when you read. So, these questions, they can be formed from the lines, from the paragraphs that you read. So, these are all important questions. These you will not find in the back exercise. So Hari Singh, he reached just in time at the station to board the Lucknow Express. The train had just started and he could have easily jumped into it. But for some reason, Hari Singh hesitated. He was feeling guilty of robbing a man who had trusted him blindly. His conscience was pricking him. He could imagine the sad face of Anil in front of his eyes. Sad not because of the stolen money, but breach of trust. So this was what was stopping Hari Singh, the breach of trust. Next question. Why did Hari Singh had no friends? Yes, at one point he says that he didn't believe in making friends. So why? Now Hari Singh had no friends because he believed that friends could be more trouble than help. So they could reveal his secret to his employers or the police. So that is why he never made friends. Next, was Hari Singh right in thinking about Anil would feel after he discovered the theft? So yes, Hari Singh was right in thinking that Anil would feel sad, but not for the loss of money, but for the loss of trust. Hari Singh had studied many faces when he robbed different people. So from his experience, he knew that Anil would be devastated at the breach of trust. Now, what was going on in Hari Singh's mind after the train had left? Hari Singh was in a dilemma after the train had left. He couldn't understand what stopped him from boarding the train. On one hand, he had 600 rupees with which he could spend a week or so like an oil rich Arab. But on the other side was Anil, who blindly trusted him, provided shelter, fed him, and even taught him to read and write. His conscience was pricking him. He had never felt like this before. He realized that with the help of Anil, he could really become a respected and educated man, and then he could earn many more 100 rupees. Thinking this, he decided to go back. So, this is important. He was in a dilemma after that. He was thinking that he is or he has robbed his benefactor. So, this was pricking him. Do you think Anil knew about the previous night incident? If yes, why did he keep quiet then? Yes, Anil definitely knew about the previous night's happenings from the damp notes. Since it had rained the previous night, he came to know that Hari Singh took the money from under his mattress and had tried to run away. But since Hari Singh had returned and had even kept the money back, Anil felt happy for the change in him and did not want to embarrass him. Rather, he gave him 50 rupees and told him that from that day onwards he would pay him regularly. Why did Anil tell Hari Singh that from that day he would be paid regularly? This is an important question. Now, why Anil did so? Now, Anil was a good man. His financial condition was not strong enough to pay Hari Singh earlier when he had approached him. But after his book was published, he had enough to pay Hari Singh regularly. Also, he must have thought that Hari Singh had realized his mistake and returned the money, but he might go back to his old ways for the want of money. And that money was Hari Singh's hard earned money, which he deserved. So, this is what Anil had thought. So, must have thought that Hari Singh had realized his mistake, so he must be given a chance. He had returned the money. And in case he is in need of money, he might again go back to his old ways. Therefore, Anil decided to pay him regularly. And also, it was Hari Singh's hard earned money only because he was serving or he was working for Anil. So he deserved that money. Now, this is the long question. So, long question, there is a proper way to attempt a long question. So, I'll tell you how to attempt a long question. So, the question is, it is often said, once a thief, always a thief. But Hari Singh in this chapter proved it otherwise. Elucidate. So, elucidate means that whatever statement is given, according to that chapter, you have to make that you have to prove that statement. You have to make the examiner understand that statement in light of the chapter. Now, here, how you have to answer this question, you have to make two paragraphs for answering a long question. The first paragraph, you can generalize the statement, and then in the second paragraph, you can prove it by giving examples from the chapter. Or you can first write about the chapter, prove the statement according to the chapter, and then in the second paragraph, you can generalize it. But there has to be two paragraphs, one a general paragraph, and the second paragraph, it should be from the chapter, like this one. Now, Hari Singh in the chapter, A Thief's Story, is an experienced thief of 15. He has a knack of gaining people's confidence and robbing them of their valuables and money. He has robbed many people before Anil, but with Anil it is different. Knowing that Anil is not able to pay him, he still agrees to stay with him. Anil proves to be a compassionate employer. He not only provides him with shelter and food, but also teaches him to cook and read and write. Anil shows his faith in Hari Singh to such an extent that he hands over the keys of his house to him and even overlooks Hari's cheating on shopping. So, this is what is happening in the chapter. And all this has a deep impact on Hari. So, what Anil, the behavior, the attitude of Anil towards Hari has a deep impact on Hari, who had never had a feeling of belongingness before with anyone else. So, when he robs Anil of his 600 rupees, his conscience pricks him and he is not able to flee. He comes back and returns the money. Therefore, the saying once a thief, always a thief stands incorrect in Hari Singh's case. So here we have proved that statement wrong. So from taking the example from the chapter, we have proved the statement wrong. Now we are going to generalize it. Now it may be true in many cases, but Hari Singh proves it wrong. A kind act or a compassionate hand can bring about a change in a person. Punishment is not always the answer. Everyone deserves a chance to improve and change. And this is what happens with Hari Singh in the story. So, this is how you have to conclude a long answer and you have to make two paragraphs. I hope you're able to understand how to write a long answer. Now, with this, we wind up this chapter. Hope it was helpful for you, and I believe that you have already subscribed to my channel. If not, kindly do so and also leave an encouraging comment below. Thank you for watching.